Good evening, everybody. John Arvosis here. Welcome to the Arvosis Report. It's Tuesday, January 17th. Hey, guys, we are here to talk about Ukraine as usual. Welcome all. I will get the TikTokers going on my iPad. I saw you guys talking moose. If you're talking moose in Alaska, in Anchorage, you will get moose in your backyard. Yes, you will. I think I've even seen them in someone showed me. I think we saw them actually. Woke up at a friend's house one morning and there were moose in her backyard, which is kind of wild. And then we got chased by one. That was fun too. Anyway, TikTok, welcome. We got the TikTokers joining us now. Excellent. All right. As usual, we'll go a minute or two until our critical mass of TikTokers and YouTubers, etc., pop in. Other folks too, but they're sort of the largest numbers are TikTok and YouTube. Anyway, hello, TikTokers. What's the deal with that, ADDI2D? Just so you know, you're on real thin ice there. Actually, you're on more than thin ice, depending what you meant by that. Mods, keep an eye on ADDID2 or whatever it is on TikTok. Hey, guys, sorry, we've got... Oh, that's fine. Okay, because you may want to Google what that is. Sorry. Okay. It tells you, this is funny actually, it tells you what number you joined as when you come on TikTok. The problem is it showed the number 88 and he simply wrote 88 as his message. Google 88 and hate. 88 is white supremacist slang for the guy that ran World War II because the 8th letter of the alphabet is H. So 88 is HH. And it's like a huge thing in white supremacist circles. I know it because of all the civil rights work I've done. Yeah, that was why I saw that and I went, what is that guy doing? Yep. Well, no, just so you know, it's actually, so everybody knows, it's one of those things you learn doing civil rights stuff. 88, bad, bad, bad. Okay, anyway, welcome everybody. That was a strange interlude, but welcome all. I am John Arvosis. Welcome on TikTok. Welcome on YouTube. We are here to talk about the latest from Ukraine. Folks, feel free while I do my introductions and start the news to say hello and where you are from. I think it's always kind of fun for people to see where everybody's from around the world. I am joining you guys on TikTok here on my iPad. I've also got YouTube and a bunch of other services here on my laptop computer. The way the show works for about the first half of the show, maybe a little shorter today because there's less news today, although, well, we'll see. I may go half an hour. Usually I go till around the half-hour mark with the latest news. And then the second part of the show, I take your guys' questions. On TikTok, feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A link that's in my profile, okay? And on the rest of you, obviously, you can use the comment box at the bottom. And please do keep the super chat questions and the super stickers, I think they're called on YouTube, and the gifts on TikTok, because I am doing this for free, guys, and I have been doing it full-time since war broke out in February, and I'm trying to make a living doing this. So if you can support me, I would very much appreciate it. So thank you for that. All right, guys, let's get rolling here. So there was some video earlier that I saw right before coming on with you. And I sort of bumped the other stories to start with this because it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing video. Thank you, Lorraine. Was that Lorraine who did that? Yep. Thank you, Lorraine, for the cat's paws. And and Andrew for the heart. I'm sorry, Andrew for the heart. Thanks, guys. So there is a video going around claiming to be some Wagner Group mercenaries. Now, the Wagner Group, you may be familiar, is the murderous Russian mercenary group. By mercenaries, I mean soldiers for hire. There are basically two main armies fighting in Ukraine. There's actually a little more than that because you've got the Chechens and others fighting as well. But the two main ones fighting are the Russian military, right? It makes sense, right? But two, you've got a separate private Russian military that's fighting in Ukraine, and it's called the Wagner in English, but in Russian, it's Wagner Group, okay? And they are a private military for hire being run by a Russian billionaire, an oligarch, basically a corrupt billionaire who is, I would say, close to Putin. Traditionally, he's been close to Putin, but I would say there's increasing evidence that maybe he's even vying for political control over Putin. Thank you, Elle, for the heart there. Well, there is a video that just came out showing three members of the Wagner Group complaining okay, complaining that they're not getting support from the regular Russian military because of this political fight that's going on between the Wagner chief, the oligarch, and the Minister of Defense. Now, this is a wild story. I mean, I've been talking to you guys for a while now. I've brought up how I think it's incredibly dangerous for Russia, not dangerous for the rest of us. It's great. You know, if you're Ukraine, this is great news, but how it's incredibly dangerous for Russia that you've got these two military forces fighting side by side, okay? The Russian military and this Russian mercenary group called Wagner. They don't like each other. They are both trying to get credit over the other. The fighting that's been going on in Bakhmut and Soledar in eastern Ukraine. This is the big battle that's going on at the moment. Okay, the biggest battle is in eastern Ukraine, the town of Bakhmut and its suburbs, including the suburb of Soledar. Okay, Bakhmut and Soledar, more or less right here on my handy dandy Ukraine map. Eastern Ukraine, right east of Kramatorsk, right southwest of Severodonetsk. Okay. Well, in the last few days, the Russians have been claiming that they took over the suburb of Soledar, and that's an important step towards taking over the town of Bakhmut. We've talked a lot before, and I won't go through a lot of detail now about how this whole effort to take over Bakhmut and this area doesn't make a lot of sense. The military experts are saying that this part of the country, not the part of the country matters, like eastern Ukraine matters, but this town doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And the Russians have been spending 6 months trying to take over this town. Well, part of the reason, the thinking is, as to why the Russians are trying to take over this town is because the battle for Bakhmut and Soledar, which is the town you will hear a lot about this week and next week, the battle for these towns has been waged by the Russian mercenary group, the Wagner Group. Regular Russian troops, at least in principle, from what we hear, regular Russian troops are not fighting in that area for that town. It's only the Wagner Group. And the thought is that the reason the Russians are going so crazy trying to win the town of Bakhmut, and again, Soledar, the suburb, is because the Wagner Group doesn't want to get egg on its face, that they've been fighting for 6 months to win over this town, to steal this town from the Ukrainians, and that if they withdraw, it's something the Ministry of Defense will use against them to say, well, look, see, we let those private military guys come in and look at what a crappy job they did, okay? So that's what's been going on. Well, in the last few days, we have seen the Russian military, the main military, the Ministry of Defense. Thank you, Frukanena. Oh, that wasn't Frukanena. That was somebody else there. Oh, that was Mariachi. Oh, thank you, El, for the hat. So we've seen the Russian military and this Wagner Group both claiming credit for taking the town of Soledar. Mind you, it's not entirely clear if the Russians have yet taken the town of Soledar. Most experts think they've gotten most of it, but the Ukrainian army is still fighting them, so the town isn't taken yet, okay? But in any case, this is a really important story. So you've got the Wagner Group, the mercenaries, and the Ministry of Defense arguing with each other publicly about who gets credit for taking the town of Soledar, okay? The main military, thank you, Addie. The main military is saying it was them. The Wagner Group is saying it was them. And each one is saying the other wasn't there. They're not mentioning the other. Take to today. You've got a video of 3 guys claiming to be from the Wagner Group, and they're on video, and I'm going to read you some of the quotes from them. They're saying that the city has not been taken. They're saying it has not been taken at all. The Russians are getting shelled left and right, nonstop shelling by the Ukrainians. They used quotes like coming out of every hole and every corner we're getting shot at all over town. So their first point these guys are making is, this is crazy. Like everyone keeps saying the town has been taken by us. The town hasn't been taken. Us meaning the Russians. The Ukrainians are fighting back hard. The second part, listen to this. The second part. So they're saying, first of all, we're getting shot at left and right. Thank you, Mr. Goofy, for the mariachi hat. We're getting shot at left and right. But we're not getting any support from the Russian military to help us. Listen to the quotes from the Wagner Group. Because Prigozhin is the Russian oligarch that runs the Wagner Group, the mercenary group. Because Prigozhin had a fight with the chief of the general staff. The chief of the general staff is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in America, for example. It is the top uniformed military official in the military. So the chief of the general staff in Russia is Gerasimov. Gerasimov just happens to be the guy that Putin put in charge of the war in Ukraine. So what the Wagner guys are saying on tape today, because Prigozhin, their leader, had a fight with the chief of the general staff, the Russian military leader, we were cut off from artillery support. The chief of the general staff is just shitting on us. They have written us off here. So the Wagner Group guys are saying that the Russian military has abandoned them while they're under fire from the Ukrainians. I mean, I'm like, I literally watched this right before coming on with you guys, and I've been like, oh my God. I mean, again, we have to take it with a grain of salt because who knows what this is. I mean, could it be fake? I suppose so. These guys are showing their faces. So if they're not Wagner military guys, thank you, Killer's a grep there. Killer's a kitty. I'll say that for your for the scratching there. They're showing their faces. So if they're faking it, it's kind of easy to be like, these guys aren't one of our guys. If they're telling the truth, this is great. I mean, somebody just said Andy said it's a shit show. It's a shit show. I mean, this is why I've been saying, like I said, the last couple of weeks, and I'll move on to the next story next, but why I've been saying for the last few weeks that this is great that there has been this public fighting between the Ministry of Defense in Russia and this mercenary group Wagner over who gets credit, because they're not working together. They're competing with each other for each one to do better than the other. And if these guys are telling the truth, the Russian Ministry of Defense has just stopped supporting with artillery fire. They cut off the artillery fire defending the Russian troops there. Amazing story. Let's move on here. So the other story, I mean, there's many stories to mention today, but another story going on is Putin supposedly is going to have a big announcement tomorrow. Now, nobody is quite sure what that is. Carlos, thank you for that. I will get to yours next. Nobody is quite sure what that big announcement is going to be. There is some thought that Putin's announcement is going to be announcing the end of the special military operation, not meaning the end of the war, but meaning that Russia will move from a special military operation to officially calling this a war tomorrow, possibly. The other thing, and this probably is more likely, I would think, is supposedly the Russians are also talking, and we've heard a rumor about this in the last week, that the Russians are talking about increasing their military to 1.5 million men. Thank you, Cami, for that. I've not seen that one before, I don't think. That's very nice of you. Thank you for that one. I appreciate that. The Russians are talking about making their goal by 2026 of having 1.5 million men under arms. Now, currently, I believe the Russians have 1 million. So 1 million to 1.5, okay. Yeah, thanks again, Cami. That was very nice of you. Thank you. That was cool. The Russian military would increase from 1 million to 1.5 million, but it would happen over the next 3 years. I'm not that impressed if that's what they're talking about, to be honest. Let's see. But over the next 3 years, I was going to say, another way you guys can help out, by the way, just a quick little aside, do make sure you follow me and subscribe on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. I don't often sort of cajole you into following me, but please do. I do Ukraine updates throughout the day, and there's always a chance, I don't quite know with TikTok or YouTube how it works, but there's always a chance that you'll get notified when I go live if you're actually following and subscribing. So please do if you would. I appreciate that. So Ukraine's top military general, thank you, Pumpelt, for the guitar. Ukraine's top military general, General Valery Zaluzhny, held a face-to-face meeting today with his U.S. counterpart, General Mark Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I believe they met in Poland today. There wasn't any announcement about any, new weapons or anything else. Having said that, I just saw before I came on with you guys, Secretary of State alluded to, our Secretary of State, Blinken, alluded to the fact that there will be some more announcements coming about increased U.S. aid. So let's see. But yeah, it was the first meeting ever between Milley, the top American general, and the top Ukrainian general. These kind of meetings are important. I always say certainly my work in politics for the last 30 years, you never want to underestimate the political connection. not political connection, excuse me, the personal connection. Thank you. Who's that? Lisa? Thank you, Lisa K, for the flowers. The personal connection between people getting to meet in politics, know each other. For example, if they don't hit it off, that can hurt, right? Thank you, Ellen, for that. But if they do hit it off, they then are able to call each other. It instills more confidence between the two, and they're able to work better and get things done. So very important. During a meeting, this was good too. Good news. The Dutch Prime Minister is in Washington today meeting with Biden. His name is Mark Rutte. He was meeting with Biden today and announced that Holland or the Netherlands will join Germany and the U.S. in sending a Patriot missile battery to Ukraine. The U.S. and Germany both said that they would send one each, and Holland is now going to send one as well, which is great. The training is already taking place for 100 service members, Ukrainian service members. They just arrived in the U.S. state of Oklahoma yesterday. I think it's Fort Sill in Oklahoma, where they are undergoing the training. It's going to be probably a few months of training, but big deal there. And for the third system to come across, that's great. I've also got a Patreon, by the way, just for folks to keep in mind. If you've been following my work, I'm sorry. You know what? Let me do Carlos's question. Oh, yeah, I forgot about your question, Carlos. But if you've been following my work for a while and you like it, please consider supporting, maybe going over to Patreon. It's a way of just contributing like $5 a month or something, basically, or $5 a month, €5 a month. But it's patreon.com/Aravosis, or on TikTok, you can just go to my profile, look for the Linktree link in my profile, click it, and all my links are there. Patreon, Discord, you name it. For the rest of you, you can go to aravosis.com or patreon.com/Aravosis. Sorry, Carlos. Carlos was saying, is the Wagner Group responsible for their own logistics? I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Oh God. You would think the Wagner Group has got to be tied in. Okay. Well, this gets interesting, first of all, because Wagner Group, for example, a lot of their work is international, right? For example, they're doing a lot of stuff right now in Mali. They've got to be responsible for their own logistics, but where are they getting it from, right? And how are they getting it there? Is it Russian military aircraft? Is it private aircraft? Callum is saying that Wagner is responsible for themselves. The thing that I'm wondering about Callum, though, is it's not like Wagner. I mean, they're invading. Okay, for example. Oh, hey, Tasso. Yassas. So we have a Greek coming in from Thessaly. You've got Russia. Here's Ukraine. Okay, Russia is all the way here. Russia goes many other places too, but Russia's over here. I mean, if Wagner is fighting here in Bakhmut, they've got to be getting supplies, either probably coming like through here or through here. The thing is, how are they not working hand in hand with the Russian military? You'd think they'd have to be, because it's not like Wagner has its own suppliers. It has its own, storage of artillery. I mean, do they have their own storage of artillery and their own storage of diesel fuel? And I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that they've got their own suppliers here, or that they're not doing something in tandem. PMC all use their own logistics. Oh, thank you there for Paula for the hat. And who was the Cami for the groundhog? Callum is saying PMC all use their own logistics. Oh, private military companies, I think he means. They could probably bribe high Russians into giving them stuff. That's the thing I'm trying to figure out is, though, when you're working there, who is bringing in? Maybe then. Okay, maybe. Actually, let me throw one point at you, though. Clearly, Callum, that the Wagner guys, if the video is real, the video that I talked to you guys about when I first came on today, that is showing 3 Wagner private military contractors. Okay. The 3 Wagner military guys saying that the Russian military cut off their artillery support. Clearly they were working in tandem to a degree. If the Russian military was shooting artillery, backing them up in Bakhmut and Soledar. Okay. So clearly they were working in tandem. That's not necessarily logistics. The other thing that's interesting to me, I just thought of this as we were talking about this. If these Wagner guys are for real, and meaning this video, and they're telling the truth, that they were getting artillery support from the Russian military up until right now, and now the Russian military is pissed at them, so they're no longer giving them artillery support, then it is not true to say that the only people fighting in Bakhmut and Soledar are Wagner people, because clearly the Wagner people themselves just admitted that up until now, it was regular Russian forces that were giving them artillery fire in Bakhmut and Soledar. Am I right? Now, that doesn't mean that Russian artillery are in the front lines, but to suggest that Russian artillery or the Russian military has no role whatsoever and it's only Wagner isn't true. Interesting, right? I mean, so the Wagner people are admitting it. Ooh, proud of myself on that one. All right, NATO is sending AWACS planes. Actually, it just did. That just arrived in Romania. AWACS are those like 747, or more or less, big planes like 747s that have that big thing on top, the big white circle that's on top for basically, it's a super radar for seeing what's going on in the battlefield. It can identify aircraft several hundred miles or several hundred kilometers away. The planes are normally based in Germany. NATO just moved several of them to Romania to patrol Romania, but basically patrol Russian military activities there. Here we go. And OTANbot's giving us more details. The radar can detect and track aircraft and ground targets at a distance of up to 400 nautical miles, 740 kilometers. Wow. Which I'm going to say that might be 500 miles or so. 740. 740 kilometers might be 500 miles. From the border between Romania and Moldova, they can cover almost all of Ukraine. There you go. So that's why NATO has been sending them. So that's good news. The death toll from the apartment attack in Dnipro, you'll recall this weekend, the Russians attacked an apartment building, a Ukrainian, civilian apartment building in the Ukrainian town of Dnipro. That's right here, I was going to the middle. It's not really the middle of Ukraine, but it's not really, there isn't really active fighting going on in Dnipro. I mean, the front is all the way down here, basically. So the Russians shot a missile that is typically used for blowing up aircraft carriers at a civilian apartment building, destroying the building, killing at least 45 people, many children. Number of people are still missing, which is really bad. Anyway, so the death toll is now up to 45. There was an interesting story, a couple more stories here I've got. Interesting story in the Atlantic Monthly today, or the Atlantic. I guess it's not called the Atlantic Monthly anymore. That's like me calling Netherlands Holland. I'm showing my age. Thank you, Pam, for the hat there. The story is about, it's from Elliot Cohen, who is a military professor over at Johns Hopkins SAIS, the School for Advanced International Studies, I think it's called. It's very similar program to what I did at Georgetown. The Georgetown program I did, SAIS is sort of the competitor in town. I would say competitor in the country, though. They're probably the top two schools doing international affairs. And he wrote an interesting story in SAIS talking about what lessons there are for the world and for nuclear weapons if we do not help if Ukraine doesn't win, not help Ukraine win, if Ukraine doesn't win. Thank you. Killer's a kitty? Oh, Killer Sage Kitty. I get it. Thank you. All right. Takes me a while sometimes to get your guys' names down. That was cute. Thank you. So listen to this. I want to read you 2 paragraphs of what he said. Listen to this. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yasutaso in ligo. So listen to this. For other nations, the lesson of a Ukraine that is not allowed to win this war is very simple. Get yourself nuclear weapons. For other nations, get yourself nuclear weapons. Finns, Poles, Kazakhs, Ukrainians, for that matter, and many others will conclude that conventional strength alone is not enough, that South Korea's leadership has begun talking about the need to reintroduce nuclear weapons to the peninsula is not coincidental. In a world where a large predatory state is stalled but not beaten decisively, the only resort for its smaller neighbors is to acquire weapons of cataclysmic power. Their leaders would be irresponsible if they did not consider that option. And the leaders of the major Western states are not just irresponsible, but willfully negligent if they fail to take the measures, all well within their power, to avoid the world that this failure would bequeath to succeeding generations. The big problem that I have said from the beginning here with the war in Ukraine is that one, not one. Overall, countries are learning the lesson that they should get nukes. If you want to be a bully, get nukes, right? The lesson we've learned with Russia, yes, the world got together and has been helping Ukraine fight back. But the world does not want Ukraine to win. I say the world. The NATO overall and the EU overall does not want Ukraine to win this war. They want to stop Russia from winning, but they don't want Ukraine to win because they're afraid of Russia. They're afraid of what Russia might do, especially if the Ukrainians take Crimea, which is the peninsula in south of Ukraine, okay? 2014, Russia invades and steals Crimea from the Ukrainians. Then this year, last year now, February of 2022, the Russians invade and they steal this territory from Ukraine. NATO, this is my take. NATO overall is okay with Ukraine getting back this land that Russia stole. They are not okay with Ukraine getting Crimea back. They're afraid that if Ukraine gets Crimea back, Putin might do something crazy, use his nukes, whatever. They're not admitting it outright, but nonetheless, this is what Biden's afraid of. It's what I bet you France is afraid of, and Germany as well. Just my guess here. The problem is that is sending a lesson to everybody, which says if you get nukes, you can get away with murder. I mean, literal murder, right? You can go and invade other countries. Maybe other governments will stand up to you, but they're not going to fully stand up to you because they're afraid you might use your nukes. The second problem is if you don't have nukes, you are going to get run over by other nuclear powers. Right? If you don't have nukes, they're going to run you over and the world will come and help you, but they're not really going to come and help you because they're going to worry that the nuclear power is going to use its nukes. So if you are a smaller country, if you are a smaller country, there's only so much you can do. Actually, I would throw this out too. And I haven't seen people talk about this. We've all talked about Taiwan and we've all talked about how the Chinese would have learned the lesson watching, and I believe this to a degree, they will have watched how the allies got together and defended Ukraine and the economic sanctions and everything else, that the Chinese would have learned the lesson and said, whoa, this might be too costly for us to invade and take Taiwan. I wonder now if the opposite lesson is possible here, which is China looks at this and says, you know what? We've got nuclear weapons. We are like Russia, basically. We go into this war. NATO is going to arm, right? NATO's going to arm Taiwan, but why should we believe Biden when he says he would send troops? Why would Biden send troops? Biden made clear he's not going to send troops to Ukraine. And the reason isn't that Ukraine isn't a key national security, meaning the argument given is not Ukraine does not rank as high on national security priorities for America. The argument I do think Taiwan, no offense to the Ukrainians, Taiwan is higher up on the priority list just because of the semiconductor industry alone. But nonetheless, the argument the U.S. gives is that we don't go into Ukraine because Russia has nukes and God knows what they would do. Well, guess what? Thank you, Alex, there. China has nukes too. So if we put our troops into Taiwan because China invades, who knows what China would do? They have nukes. Why wouldn't the same rules apply? Why wouldn't the same rules about what kind of armaments we give Taiwan, what kind of help we give, apply to defending Taiwan from China? Because China's got nukes. I mean, this is the danger of treating a nuclear country as so sacrosanct. I mean, we have no choice but to take Russia seriously because of their nukes. You can't just say, well, let's just ignore Russia's nukes. We've got to take it seriously. But we are sending a dangerous message to other nuclear powers, and we are sending a dangerous message to other wannabe nuclear powers, whether they're big powers or little powers. It's just, I'll say this. Ukraine should have never given up its nuclear weapons. And I am somebody who does not want more nuclear weapons in the world, but there's no way Ukraine should have given them up, because if Ukraine kept its nuclear weapons, it would have never had this problem. But thank you, Great CFI, for that. A couple more stories, and then we'll go to the questions. I was going to say, that was it. That was it. Make sure, please keep the gifts coming, the super chat, super stickers, and the gifts on TikTok. As I said, I do this for free. And I literally have been making the income I've been making the last 9 months has been pretty much exclusively from doing this work with you guys. Some of it's been the auctions we're doing on Discord. Some of it has been the TikTok. TikTok gives some money for each video you put up. It's been the TikTok gifts you guys have been giving me. It's been the gifts you've been giving me on YouTube and the Discord as well. I'm sorry, the Patreon as well. I've got a number of you guys subscribing on Patreon, which has been very helpful. But literally, my income for the last year has been you guys, so please do keep the gifts coming. I appreciate it. Serbia is telling Russia to stop trying to recruit Serbian civilian citizens to fighting in Russia. It's against the law in Serbia to actually join up a foreign military. The Russians put out some kind of video promoting two Serbians that somehow volunteered or something. And the Serbian president got pissed off and went public and said, stop it. Like, stop it. These were, by the way, this was for, these are for the Wagner group, for the mercenary group that the Wagner mercenaries, I believe they were doing some of their advertisements and stuff in Serbian to try to get Serbs to join up. And it's interesting because Serbia, historic ally of Russia, you've got the religious connection because of the Orthodox Christianity. You've also, unfortunately, got the issue of the Serbs. You know, Yugoslavia was in the Soviet orbit. It wasn't as much I forgot what we used to describe Yugoslavia as. It was different than Eastern Europe in the sense that it wasn't the Eastern Bloc, but it was not great. Okay. And the Serbs, unfortunately, have kept a lot of that mentality. They really sort of side with the Russians a little too much, unfortunately. So that's interesting to me, at least, that the Serbian president sort of stood up and said, Russians, stop trying to get my people involved in this war. That's good. That's good. Now, maybe it's because Serbia has been trying to join NATO and everything else. And I think they've got that partner status or whatever it's called, whatever the EU, associate status or whatever it's called. Would you call them a Soviet satellite? See, I wasn't sure, though. I wasn't sure if you'd call them a Soviet satellite. I would have more called a Soviet satellite, East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, right? All of those guys, the Eastern Bloc. Whereas Yugoslavia was independent of that, but it was still Soviet oriented, but it was independent, and still kind of dictatorial too, but nonetheless. Thank you. Who was that did that? Oh, Kiwi. Thank you, Kiwi Jess. Anyway, let's go on. Two more stories really quick. Germany has a new defense minister, Boris Pistorius. I have seen a couple different things here. No, Tito, exactly. Tito kept them independent. Yeah. One of my uncles in Greece, a big military guy, was friends with Tito. Tito came to his funeral in northern Greece. He drove by. So very interesting. Thank you for the gift there, Lucy the Llama, big drama UK. So Germany has a new defense minister. It's not entirely clear what the impact of this is going to be on Ukraine. The new defense minister is Boris Pistorius. I have seen two different accounts of this guy. One saying he's pro-Russia. He was opposing the sanctions. His girlfriend apparently is the former fourth wife of Gerhard Schroeder, who is a former German leader who's super pro-Russia. Having said that, I saw some other reports saying he wasn't that bad, so I don't know. In the end, the decision as to whether Germany is going to permit re-export of the Leopard 2 tanks, which are the German tanks that the Poles, the Finns, and possibly others are going to want to send Ukraine. The Germans have to give permission because they're German-made tanks. So the Germans have to give permission. Supposedly, the decision is up to the German defense minister, but give me a break. He's not going to do it if Scholz, Germany's chancellor, the head of Germany, is against it, right? So, we'll see. Final story, which is interesting and could have an impact on Ukraine here, is about China. So the news broke today. China's population shrunk for the first time in 60 years last year. It shrunk by something like 800,000 or 850,000 people. Thank you, spouse of B, for the mariachi hats and the fruit hat. Who was that? Oh, sorry, MJD Dance Mum for the fruit hat. Thank you. The Chinese have 1.411 billion people as a population, but their population went down. And it's the first time it went down in 60 years. The other thing that's interesting in that regard is the Chinese economy it didn't go down, but the growth shrunk to 3% last year. In the West, that would be considered great growth. Not in China. In China, you've got to remember growth has traditionally been 6, 7, 8%. Okay. Oh, we're talking going back decades. This, I believe, was the slowest growth that China has had in 50 years. So you've got Chinese economy slowing down markedly, Chinese population shrinking. Part of the shrinkage, and the shrinkage and the economy both is happening. You've got an increased, well, okay, obviously the shrinkage is happening because people aren't being replaced, right? The population China has long had policies. They had a one-child policy up until I think 2015, where they were basically, you were only allowed to have one child. That was it. And at least at one point, I remembered studying this in grad school, parents were basically, I believe I'd read, they were killing their female children because they didn't want girls. They wanted, if they figured if they could only have one child, they wanted a boy. Right? So kind of crazy stuff. Well, China finally realized about 7, 8 years ago that they were starting to get a little worried about the demographics. So they got rid of the one child policy. Well, it didn't help. They still are having problems with not having enough births. COVID isn't helping, but the birth rate is too low. They are now not having enough new workers. They've got way too many people retiring. Retirees, I think, have gone something like 20% of the population, but that's significantly higher than where it used to be. And just like in any economy, more people retire. If you retire, you're taking money out of the economy in principle, if there's any kind of a government pension or something else, and you're not working a job anymore. So you're not a part of the labor force. I don't want to say you're not contributing to the economy. I don't want to sound negative because I hope to be retired soon, like all of you, but you know what I mean. If you're retired, you're not an active member of the workforce, you're not producing stuff. Well, if you're retired and there aren't people replacing you, then the pool of workers starts to shrink. What happens, and we know this from COVID, what happens when the pool of workers starts to shrink? You start to have shortages of goods. You start to have prices go through the roof, right? Because like what we saw with COVID. Remember, initially with COVID, one of the big problems was truck drivers, or lorry drivers, as you Brits call them. The truck drivers looked like a lot of them were just simply retiring. And they were retiring. Goods were backing up. Remember, we were having goods back up in the port of Los Angeles. There were all these. I had some medicine for my dog, flea and tick or whatever it is, that I order in Australia because it's cheaper. It took 2 or 3 months of it sitting on a boat out of Los Angeles because U.S. Customs just couldn't get to it. Everything was backed up. So that's what happens when you start to lose your workforce. Anyway, here's where it gets us to Ukraine. We've talked before about how the Chinese, sort of the most important thing to China is its economy, right? Economic growth, hugely important for the Chinese economy. It is a big country. It's a lot of people. Thank you, Big Drama, for the mariachi hat. And it still is a poor country in many regards, right? They want to keep bringing up the economic growth of the poorer parts of society, the working class. Well, so what I was going to tell you with China. Oh yeah. So what has been talked about with Ukraine, especially in the last actually about a week ago, there was a really good article in the Financial Times talking about how Chinese leaders were very upset about Russia, saying that Russia did not fully inform them that they were going to invade Ukraine and try to take all of the country, etc. But the bigger issue was that the Chinese were upset because they've destroyed their relationship with Europe. Maybe not destroyed it, but they've really set back their relationship with so many countries around the world, countries that have really good economies, right? The Russians do not have a really good economy. The Russians do not have a really big economy either. Europe does. America does. Now, the Chinese were a little less interested in developing better relations with America, but they were really interested in developing better relations with Europe because of the economy, but also they wanted to sort of pull Europe a little away from America and not keep America and Europe pushed together, which happened as a result of the invasion, right? The Ukraine invasion, America and Europe have learned to work together again, and they've learned how important both sides can be. In any case, so what's interesting with the China stuff is if the Chinese economy is slowing so dangerously and the Chinese labor market is in such danger that the Chinese population is now shrinking, China is going to be even more worried about their economy than they were before. And if China's more worried about the economy, that is a greater incentive to be friendly with Europe and to be friendly with America. And finally, to not go invade places like Taiwan, that's going to bring an economic boycott of your country. Russia does not help you if you are a country worried about your economic growth. Europe and America do. And the rest of Asia, by the way, does as well. So very interesting. All right. Let's get rolling here. I also have a Discord as well. Go check it out, discord.aravosis.com. And let's get rolling, guys. All right. So for questions on TikTok, as I always say, you can put the questions in the Q&A in the profile on TikTok there, and on YouTube and everywhere else. Obviously, you can use the comment box. And please liberally feel free to use the super chat and the gifts on TikTok liberally if you so choose. I appreciate it. Strike 191 says from Twitch, do you think countries will reconsider long-range missiles now tanks are being sent? Eventually, yes. The thing is, as each new weapon gets sent to Ukraine, there's a that's the word I'm looking for here. There's a it breaks the glass ceiling, but what I mean is there's a concern among NATO, right? From the beginning. Well, we want to be careful how much we give Ukraine because we don't want to piss off Putin and we don't want to escalate. They kept using the word escalate. I don't know what, every time we help Ukraine, it's escalating, whatever that is. Well, their concern was a threshold. Sure, you can call it that, Sarah. The concern that some NATO countries, certainly America, I think France and Germany have, is if we give too much to Ukraine, too good of weapons, Russia will freak out. And God knows what Russia will do, right? They'll use their nukes, whatever, this kind of garbage. Every time we give Ukraine something better and Russia doesn't flip out, Russia doesn't use its nukes. Thank you, Flower Lady. Appreciate that. You're very generous. You're always generous with the cool mirror. I don't even know what that is. The mirror in the ocean. Thank you. And Happy Beach for the mariachi too. Every time that a new weapon system is given to Ukraine, and basically the Russians don't use their nukes, it starts to make people breathe a little more easily. Thank you, Cami, for that. And say, so, okay, Patriot missiles got sent. Russia didn't use nukes. HIMARS got sent. Russia didn't use nukes. I mean, they threatened each time, right? The U.S. and Germany and France all announce, thank you, Political Deep Day, for the hat, all announce armored personnel carriers, light tanks from the French. The Germans and the Americans are going to be sending Bradley fighting vehicles and Marder vehicles. The Brits are now sending tanks. Each of these announcements is a big deal. And it's a big, I don't want to call it escalation, but it is it's widening the realm. I always call it the Overton window in politics. Thank you, Sam. I am. It's widening the realm of the possible weapons we can send that no one thought were okay to send before. And now they got sent. And what happens? The Russians don't go nuclear. The Russians aren't using their chemical weapons. So I think, so my long story short on that, and thank you, Me95 for the corgi, is by providing these tanks, the Brits, and then hopefully the Germans, it's one more piece of evidence that every time we give a better weapon to Ukraine, the Russians aren't freaking out. The Russians aren't retaliating, right? So that maybe we shouldn't be as worried about the Russians retaliating and freaking out. Maybe we should give Ukraine the weapons it needs. So I think that's how it helps. I don't think they're directly related. I will say the whole issue, I find it very strange, the whole issue with the weapons. I do wonder whether the Americans didn't threaten something privately and tell the Russians, you better not do, for example, you better not buy long-range missiles from Iran, or we're going to give long-range missiles to Ukraine. I wonder if that's why, because the whole concern about long-range missiles makes no sense. Or the Russians turned around months ago and threatened the Biden administration and said, if you give them long-range weapons, they are going to now put our cities at risk. And if our cities are at risk, and by risk, I don't mean the Ukrainians are attacking them, but meaning if you give weapons that can go 200 miles or 300 kilometers, that means that our cities, 30 Russian cities can be hit from the Ukrainian border. I don't know how many. and therefore we will need to use nukes to take them out or something. I think the Russians made some kind of a threat like that, and that's why the Biden people are freaking out about not giving longer range weapons to the Ukrainians. And again, I think Russia's bluffing. What you simply tell the Russians is, you know what? If you keep doing what you're doing, we're going to give the weapons. If you keep bombing civilians, we're going to give the weapons. Period. And there's no way you're going to use nukes, because if you start a nuclear war, the Chinese are going to dump you, the Indians are going to dump you, and we're going to enter the war because we won't have a choice but to enter the war because of the not just the carnage of you using nukes, but the lesson that you send to the rest of the world by using nukes is that it's okay for them to use nukes. So we will not have a choice but to enter the war and declare war on you. And if that's what you want, okay. But you throw that back at Russia and watch them go, uh-oh. Again, I think Biden's done a great job on this, but I think Biden's got a little too much. He shows his hand a little too much. And I think he's a little too afraid. Warmonger guy. Yesterday I was leftist crazy guy. Today I'm warmonger guy. By the way, that would be another Russian troll, I'm going to guess. Thank you, Wanda Rank, for the meteor shower. That's a very generous one. I know that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Warmonger guy. I just think that's funny too, because that's one of those. I'm a big linguist. I like languages, and I always enjoy people saying things in American English that don't quite like. Warmonger guy is not an expression you would say in American English. It just makes me laugh because it could be a legitimate foreigner, but it also could be a Russian troll. Thank you. Who's that? Hilipi for the Panther Paws. Warmonger guy. I want that t-shirt, actually. Warmonger guy. All right, Ben. The Ukrainian presidential advisor resigned today. Yeah, that was Arestovich, after saying a Russian missile fell on the apartment building in Dnipro after it was shut down by Ukrainian missile. Yes, I did not. Thank you, Me95. I didn't include it as a story because I wasn't sure it does anything. You know what I mean? I mean, I appreciate you bringing it up, but I wasn't sure it changes anything. Basically, after the Russians hit the apartment building in Dnipro, where they've killed now at least 45, a civilian apartment building, horrible, several days ago, destroyed it, killed at least 45 Ukrainians. Many more people are still buried in the rubble. Kids were killed. I mean, really horrific story. One of the top advisors to Zelensky, Arestovich, came out and said that it looked like the Russian missile hit the building after it was intercepted by the Ukrainians, that and basically suggest, I mean, it doesn't make Ukraine to blame, but suggesting that the missile, basically the Russians weren't targeting the building and it wouldn't have hit the building, but for the Ukrainians, you know, missiles coming, Ukrainians hit it, it goes into the building, right? Well, everybody else came out and said that wasn't true. Thank you, Benji, for the llama. Appreciate that. Everybody else came out and said that isn't what happened. In fact, everyone is saying that the Ukrainians do not actually have a way of hitting these Russian missiles. That's a big part of the problem, that they just have no way of hitting the Russian missiles out of the sky. Nonetheless, it caused a real firestorm in Ukraine. Thank you, Robin Dahl, and Benji for the llama, which makes me wonder if the issue here isn't some internal Ukrainian politics about Arestovich that we're not aware of. Because I looked at that story and went, yeah, not helpful to say that. But if you're wrong, I wouldn't say, you need to resign right now. You just say the guy screwed up. He thought we shot it out of the sky. In fact, it was a missile that we have no ability to shoot out of the sky. He got it wrong. You wouldn't want one of the top advisors to resign over that. You want him to resign over that if there's history. This is just my take as an American political guy. To me, there was history there. There was a lot of people that hate this guy, and they've hated him for a long time. And this wasn't, on its own, this wasn't a big deal, but this was the last straw, or it was an opportunity to get rid of him. Either way, I think there's something else going on behind the scenes with this guy and the people who don't like him. In any case, that is what happened. He did resign. I'm not sure it's such a big deal, but whatever. Thank you, Alan John, for the mariachi hat. Oh, and another one from Ellen. Thank you. Or Ellen John. I'm going to guess it's a two name. You're going to keep throwing them in there. Thank you. PB&J. Do you think it's actually Biden who's afraid to send anything to Ukraine, or is it the Pentagon? All I can tell you is, I think it's both, first of all. Thank you, Jesse James, for that, for the TikTok award. I was speaking to some journalists months ago, some top American journalists, military, covering the military. They told me when I was talking about this and complaining about Biden, off the record, but I can share it as an American journalist or two American journalists telling me this because I won't tell you who. They told me, they said, it's Milley. It's not Biden. So what do you mean? They said it's Milley. Milley's the one who's freaking out Biden and convincing him that things could just get out of control with the Russians like that. You don't know where things could go. And that basically he convinced Biden to be very careful, go very slow in what he gives Ukraine. I don't know if that's true. I can just say two journalists I trust told me that's what they've heard. Milley, who knows though? I mean, let me say this. He's an old American general. I'm not going to discount what he says because he, I hope he knows Russia better than I do. I mean, I've been studying this stuff too for years, but he's, older than I am and has been a general for a long time. Having said that, I think part of it's biased Biden too. I think Biden certainly likes to cut deals. Okay. Biden loves to cut deals. Biden also, he hasn't done it here. Biden has a tendency to cave. This is just my take on Biden's politics overall, watching his politics in the US. He can kind of be firm. I've seen politicians like this. They're kind of firm, and then at the end, they cut a deal. Biden, I think, likes to cut deals. And therefore, having said that, cutting deals has made Biden super effective at marshaling this international coalition. And I really do. I mean, I think every country gets credit that's part of the coalition, right? I do think, and I hope I'm not showing too much American bias here, but I do think somebody has to marshal the world and kind of take the lead, and the U.S. took the lead. The Brits were there too, but the Brits, I don't think, had the gravitas that America could bring to really marshal the world, okay? Even though the Brits have been out there better than we've been. And the Poles have been better than we've been. The Baltic states have been better than we've been. I'm saying way ahead of my own government, right? In terms of supporting Ukraine. But nonetheless, Biden gets massive credit because he was able to, he knows how to work deals in foreign policy, and he knows how to work diplomacy. And therefore he did, I think, an amazing job bringing everybody along. Okay. And probably especially bringing the Germans and the French along. Right? I don't know whether the Brits would be as effective at bringing the French and the Germans along as Biden would be. Maybe. I'm not convinced. Historically, France and Germany, not France and Germany, France and the UK, you know what I mean? So any case, there you go. So I think Biden's part of the problem, but Milley's not helping. So let me look on TikTok for a question on here from you guys. I mean, I see questions on there I pulled up, but let me pull up one of the ones in the Q&A as well. But Biden's done an amazing job at the same time, right? I'm not trying to, well, you know me anyway. I try to be a straight shooter on this stuff. I'm not trying to knock Biden, but so he has done an amazing job pulling a lot of this together. But hang on, Q&A, TikTok. I don't know. The president of Europe, probably the European Commission, like Ursula von der Leyen or whatever her name is, says intelligence says 100,000 Ukrainians have died. Wow. I have not seen numbers that high. I wouldn't be surprised. It's got to be tens of thousands easy, you would think. I don't know. Does anybody, I mean, von der Leyen, oh God, is that Dutch or something? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Von der Leyen? I don't know. Is it the Ukrainian generals that are so good? Their military is good. I mean, I think you've got to have everything. The generals are really good. Okay, Ryan Boy is saying 100,000 is said a lot by the Russians. Yeah, though who knows? Oh, she's German. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the numbers of civilians, but the Ukrainian general. Look, the Ukrainians are really good at this. It's got to be the generals. It's Zelensky, meaning he's being a very good he's being very good, being a good leader. The Ukrainians know how to fight. They're clearly smart. They clearly are able to learn fast. They're clearly, in America, we say they got like the MacGyver instinct. They're clearly very good at learning something and then applying it elsewhere, right? So that they've been able to sort of take weapons and turn them and use them for something totally unintended or something that we never intended it to be. That's everybody. I see somebody had mentioned, John Roddy mentioned American advisors. The American advisors have been very helpful, and I always like to tell this story. An American military friend of mine said to me several months ago, and we were talking about it. And I said, I said, I don't want to take away from the Ukrainians, but we have helped train, NATO helped train them for the last 8 years. That certainly didn't hurt. And he said, yeah, but guess who else we've been training for the last 20 years? The Iraqis and the Afghanis. He goes, and their military isn't good at all. He goes, in the end, it depends on the military you're training. You can't train bad students, in essence. You can't teach bad students. The Ukrainians are just that good, but I think it permeates military society in the sense of it's the generals, it's the troops overall. They're good students. Zelensky has been a good leader. He's probably been a good leader in terms of also A, picking the right people around him, and B, empowering them to make decisions, right? So Zelensky knows what he knows. And the other thing too with Zelensky, though, is Zelensky clearly has got an instinct that's very interesting in terms of, remember, Zelensky didn't want to leave when Biden had offered to get Zelensky out of there. And what was it? I don't need a ride. I need ammo. Right. I think that was, you guys told me that was the exact quote that Zelensky said in response. That is the man, right? Clearly this was a leader who his gut instinct was, no, I've got to stay. We've got to fight these guys. I can't move. We can't move the government out east. They were talking about moving the government to Lviv in eastern Ukraine or moving the government to Poland. And he was like, no, we've got to stay where we are. Those were great instincts. I need ammo, not a ride. There you go. Those were great instincts that, you can't teach in someone. I mean, not like they taught him anyway. So I need bullets, not a ride. In any case, you get the idea. So yeah, there's, in the end, you actually, was it General Hertling or who did who wrote, I think he wrote an article a couple years ago about the Ukrainians and working with the Ukrainian military. But that's the kind of stuff, I've got to read that. That's the kind of stuff that you've got to see is some of the military experts who have worked with the Ukrainians who can tell you, because it's a really good and interesting question. Why are they so good at this? I mean, we know why the Russians suck, right? The Russians suck, and there's a lot of reasons. I mean, the military, right? The graft, the theft, the bad weapons, the wheels, the troops themselves. They haven't been told why they're even fighting. They're not getting the supplies they need. So we've got all of those reasons. But and just the way the Russian military works as well, where lower down isn't empowered. But why is it that Ukraine has been just this damn good? I think is a really interesting question. Ben asks, do you think the West and NATO would rather fund a guerrilla war in Ukraine rather than the current war they are supplying? A guerrilla war, and I explained this only because somebody asked me once, they didn't know what a guerrilla war was, and I figured everybody knew. A guerrilla war is basically, I always say to people who know Red Dawn or whatever it was called in America, Wolverines are a guerrilla war. Basically, it would mean if the Russians invaded and took over America, and the French and the English or whatever snuck us weapons, and we formed cells. Like I got together with my friends and we secretly would attack the Russian troops, and like the Russians invade and they take over, right? And we secretly go and we blow up grocery stores where they shop, and we blow up schools, and we blow up military vehicles, and we set car bombs in their cars at night. But during the day, nobody knows who we are, right? Right. I'm John Aravosis doing my videos, but at night we're guerrillas. Basically, we're these secret people fighting. That's an example of what a guerrilla war would be. So what Ben is asking is, would NATO have partisans is one word. Yep. Would NATO have preferred to be funding something like that than what we're funding? You know, I don't think preferred. I don't think so. Not entirely. I know, Harvey, you'll be part of the cell. I don't think entirely NATO would have preferred it, because a large part of the reason we got involved, thank you, Inspired Woman, for the singing hot dog. Big reason we got involved is we don't want Russia to have a victory here. And even if there's a guerrilla war, there'd be a guerrilla war because Russia would have basically won, right? We don't want Russia to basically win. We don't want Russia to walk away and go, yeah, we're fighting a guerrilla war now, but we pretty much took all of Ukraine. Let's now put our sights on Poland or somebody else, or Moldova or whatever. And parts of Romania, who knows? Well, that is Moldova. Or, well, not Moldova, but Transnistria and all of that. Sorry with this. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's. I guess I don't think anybody's thinking that way necessarily. I guess to some degree, a guerrilla war is easier. Sure, right? I mean, Afghanistan, we gave them the weapons, we gave them the training. It was easier than. Well, I don't know if it's easier. It was cheaper. Well, actually, that's not true either, though. Afghanistan and Iraq were very expensive at one point. Very expensive compared to what we're doing now. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place on this one because I don't know. I don't know. I certainly think we were planning on a guerrilla war, right? We thought Ukraine was going to lose right away. But yeah, no, people did not necessarily. Elise was saying she wasn't familiar with the term until recently or whatever, or a while ago. Not everybody's familiar with the term guerrilla. And I learned, like I said, I figured it out because somebody had asked me, and I went, oh God, I think on TikTok I saw, what is guerrilla war? And I thought, oh, that's funny. I just had never. It depends where. I mean, I always laugh because my cousin Mark called me once when I was working in the U.S. Senate, and I laughed because I was talking to one of my staffer, and Mark called, and I said, "Wait, hang on a second," and I turned to her and I said, "It's oh God, what was the? I forgot if I said CBW." I think I said CBW or something. And I said, oh no, that's CBW, chemical and biological warfare, or something like that, or nuclear, but whatever it was. And he sat there and he goes, I can't believe like those are words you use in the office. And I was like, that's what we do. But it's, you don't realize to what degree what is, I think for all of us, to what degree what we all know in our various fields is sort of our specialized knowledge. And anyway, okay, let me do a quick recap and then we will be done. And I may skip the Discord tonight because I did yesterday, but we'll probably do it again tomorrow. All right, quick recap of the news we covered today. There is a video allegedly showing several Wagner mercenary fighters claiming that the regular the regular Russian military is no longer funding them. Oh, it's CBN, chemical, biological, nuclear. That was it. Yeah, it was CBN. I'm looking at Avery. That's what it was. It was CBN. I'm like, it's chemical, biological, nuclear. In any case, so yeah, very interesting that the Wagner Group is claiming that the Russian military is no longer providing them artillery support in Soledar in eastern Ukraine because they're pissed at them. Putin allegedly has a big announcement tomorrow. Whether he's declaring official war, we don't know. We'll find out. The Ukrainian military's top general met with America's top general, Mark Milley, today in Poland. That was their first meeting. During a meeting with President Biden in Washington, the Dutch prime minister said that he's going to be providing, or his country, a Patriot missile battery to Ukraine. That makes 3 that they'll be getting, which is great news. NATO sent AWACS surveillance planes to Romania to basically spy on Russian troops, Russian planes, and also what's going on the ground. The death toll in the Russia's attack on an apartment building in Dnipro, Ukraine, is now up to 45 dead. More are still there. I then read a portion of an essay from Elliot Cohen, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins here in DC, in The Atlantic, arguing that if Ukraine does not win this war definitively, we are sending a message to every country in the world that they too need to get nuclear weapons. Serbia is telling Russia to stop trying to recruit Serbian citizens to fight in the Wagner mercenary group. Germany's new defense minister, Boris Pistorius, just took over today. to mixed reviews. Not entirely clear how that will or won't affect Ukraine, although he will be involved in the decision on whether Germany will allow its Leopard 2 tanks to be re-exported from Finland and Poland, among other places, to Ukraine. And finally, China's population shrunk for the first time in 50 years last year, at the same time that its economy is not growing nearly as much, which could be interesting in terms of Ukraine because it puts greater pressure on China to figure out how to grow its economy. And that means aligning itself with big economic powers such as Europe and America, and not worrying as much about small economic and shrinking economic powers, which is Russia. Russia maybe can help China in a lot of stuff. I don't know what, but Russia is not an economic power, and it's a shrinking military power as well. The more China worries about their economy, the more China has an incentive to become friendlier with America and Europe. That's my take. All right, guys. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking on the trolls as always on TikTok, YouTube. I think you've been troll safe pretty much lately. Well, within reason. I thought I saw one person complain today. I'm not sure, meaning a troll, but I'm not sure. I will we'll skip the Discord tonight. But as I said, you can go to my profile on TikTok, or generally there's a link in my profile of all of my links, my Linktree link. You can also just go to erevosis.com, my last name.com, and it'll show you my Discord, my Patreon, you name it, everything. And you can check that. You can also check out my LinkedIn so you can see who I am and why I talk about this stuff. So thank you guys. I will skip the Discord tonight. I'll take a little bit of a break. Gonna go watch some of my classic TV. I started watching St. Elsewhere, which is very strange. A wonderful old American TV show about a hospital, but it's something like from 1980 or something. And this hospital looks like something out of the Middle Ages, at least compared to American hospitals now. It's bizarre. I mean, it's really bizarre. So that's been kind of fascinating right there. Turn it on again. The first episode's going to freak you out. It's so old. It's so old. Anyway, I've never watched Saving Hope. No. Anyway, I may give it a little more time. I did love the show, but it's weird watching it because I'm kind of watching it going, all right. Actually, I'm watching the new Jack Ryan series, the new year of Jack Ryan. He is in St. Elsewhere. It's very strange. Yeah. St. Elsewhere. The new Jack Ryan is called Jack Ryan, but it's the third season of it that's out, which is very good as well. Okay, guys, I'm going to head out. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern US. Okay? All right. Bye-bye. And you all